Coming up on the next edition of Power and Politics, the U.S. Senate is set while the House races are still taking shape. So what can we expect from a second Trump administration? And the president-elect choosing several Floridians to round out his cabinet, including reportedly a U.S. senator from Florida. Hello and welcome to another edition of Power and Politics. I'm your host, Frank Cipolla. Power and Politics is a weekly, right-down-the-middle look at the top stories affecting the state, with a special emphasis on the psychology behind the decisions and issues that affect our lives. I am joined today, as I am every week, by my co-host, longtime clinical and Emmy Award-winning political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi. Dr.
Great to be here again, Frank.
Well, President-elect Trump is wasting no time in putting together a cabinet, as he has also met this week with outgoing President Joe Biden. But before we get to that, Doctor, let's talk about what happens next when it comes to both parties. What do the Democrats have to do now after being soundly defeated?
Well, Frank, I think that's the right question. The Democrats first. They first and foremost need to stand for something. I'm not sure what I got out of this election in terms of where they are, especially, as we said last week, when it comes to wages, fees, money, and most important, taxes. Most people in America don't like this taxation system. They don't like to hear about, soaking the rich. People always want to move up, and now the Democrats are looked at as people who just want to tax and spend. And they have to start with some kind of thinking that they're going to change. They're going to modify their approach on taxes and how people look at money. That's the first thing.
Let me play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Okay. The tax plan they were proposing would tax anyone who makes above $400,000 a year. Okay. The vast majority of Americans, I would venture to say, make below $400,000 a year. So they're not really being taxed. Was it a muddled message?
You're making a point, but that point is not a good one anymore, in my view. I'll tell you why. Because everybody moves up into a different tax bracket when they make more money. People don't like that. On the other end, the seniors, they have their Social Security taxed. There are people who make money as seniors. They don't like the fact that their Social Security is taxed because they feel they earned that. They don't want it taxed. It's the emotion. It's the psychology. People don't like the system. They don't like the system. They're angry at it. And that's why Democrats are not making a lot of sense. They're not really hitting where the people are thinking.
What you're saying is when we drill down too deeply, we sort of lose the average guy.
The Democratic Party has lost the average guy. Trump should have brought in some Democrats and thanked them for that election victory. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, the messaging was just terrible, but the Democrats don't stand for whatever is needed when it comes to money. I've talked about a flat tax before. Maybe Trump is right. Maybe no income tax. Just have a consumption tax or something, but something different.
Do you think the deficit is too arcane for the average Joe to digest? The deficit is going up. It means that we owe more money on the interest and so on of the money that we've spent and are spending on a yearly basis. Taxes or no taxes or flat tax, in your case, might raise the deficit.
Well, it might not. You might have actually more people paying taxes because the rich don't really pay taxes. I mean, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are probably right about that. Their messaging is terrible. But if everybody had to pay on what they purchased, maybe the government would take in more money rather than people avoiding taxation altogether. Or a flat tax where everybody at all stages of the economy, when it comes to taxes, they pay 22% or 25%. Maybe there'd be more money coming into the government.
All right, what do Republicans do now? They're obviously taking a victory lap, and more power to them. But what do they do now going forward?
Well, this is, of course, a big win for the conservatives, the far right, the MAGA group. But they have to be careful, because if they're going to go extreme politics, that is going to present some problems. They're going to have some issues with the moderate Republicans who won in the Senate and in the House. And it's going to be a conflict, as we say in psychology, an approach avoidance conflict that's going to be magnified everywhere across the board.
Explain approach avoidance conflict.
Well, there are going to be Republicans who may want to approach a particular issue because of Trump, because they know they ought to do it, but they really don't like it. So they want to avoid it, and they may want to avoid saying yes to the president because their seat's in jeopardy. If they go along with this policy, they're going to lose their seat. So a classic approach avoidance setup here. And I really think that Trump can be successful. He has a lot of opportunity here to be successful.
But he has a mandate.
How he plays his cards is going to be very, very important.
All right, time now for one of our regular segments we do every week. We call it the Rossi Rant.
And Frank, continuing this discussion, I'd like to talk about progressives in the Democratic Party, because if anybody's missed the boat, it's the progressive group. I just don't understand how they can continue to say soak the rich, tax the rich, when people at all stages of the economy want to be rich. They want to move forward. If you ask me, Senator Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, they're now billboards for the Republican Party. They're parading around and they're really helping the Republican Party. Now, what they stand for might be correct. People who make a lot of money should pay tax. But why should they pay at a higher bracket? Why don't we have everybody in the same bracket? Or as Trump even said, there's no income tax. Well, maybe that rings a bell for a lot of people. But the Democrats, especially the progressives, they're not getting it.
We should do a show. I know you're a proponent of the flat tax. We'll do a whole show on the flat tax.
We should.
Okay. Coming up, looks like we will have a new U.S. Senator in Florida, as President-elect Trump is reportedly ready to appoint Marco Rubio to be Secretary of State. We'll talk about that and how it changes the Florida political landscape when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. I'm Frank Cipolla, joined by clinical and political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi. Well, one-time Trump rival Senator Marco Rubio reportedly is set to become the next Secretary of State. Rubio, who sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee, will leave his Senate seat if that goes through, creating an opening for Governor Ron DeSantis to fill. DeSantis could technically appoint himself, but he doesn't seem to want to do that. So who gets the nod and why, my friend?
Well, I don't know who's gonna get the nod to take Rubio's place, but I'd just like to say this. There are a lot of people in the Republican Party who are not so sure about Rubio, and he hasn't been approved yet, if you quote unquote, for this position. I think he's most likely going to get it, but there's a lot of turmoil here because Senator Rubio just is not that far right a person compared to some of the extreme MAGA folks. So there's some consternation here, in the Republican Party about this possible nominee. So we're going to have to see how this plays out in the next few days.
Well, as of this taping, from what we hear, and it could change in the days ahead, Trump would like Rubio, but some of his cohorts are trying to talk him out of it.
Undermine that, yeah. Now, but with Rubio, to answer your question, I think he's a real statesman. He's got a lot of knowledge about the world scene. He's very well read. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that is bilingual and he's knowledgeable. And he presents himself as somebody who could actually handle this position. He's been in the Senate for a long time now. Really, from an objective point of view, he's probably a good choice, but I wonder why he's getting questioned so much because, he's just not far right enough, And
one a good point there, by the way. And one of the people President-elect Trump has selected as chief of staff is Susan Wiles. She's from Florida as well. You have some opinions about her. Explain.
Yeah, Susie Wiles, actually everyone knows her. They don't even use her last name. It's just Susie because she's so well known in the Republican Party. Another person who is extremely well-read, organized. She presents herself well. She's run a lot of campaigns for DeSantis, actually, for Rick Scott. She's very bright, capable, and a moderate.
I sense there's a but at the end of this sentence.
No, she's a moderate. The only but I have with Susie is can she keep that moderate and sensible thing going in the White House, because you have Donald Trump to contain. And as we know, he likes to be the Donald, and sometimes that's a problem. So a good choice, and maybe a good choice for him because she can moderate him.
Mm-hmm. Good point. All right. One of the amendments that went down to defeat this past election day was the abortion amendment that would have extended the amount of time to get an abortion. Doctor, what do supporters do now? I mean, they got 55% of the vote, but they're still at a 6-week ban in the state.
Actually, I think it was even 57%, actually, close to the 60 mark. It's got to be very frustrating, as we said here before.
Yeah,
That,
and
that,
we've talked about this for weeks.
Yeah, overwhelming. 57. It's almost like a landslide in one direction, but those people are not the winners. So, what do they do? They could wait for the next election cycle and have a governor come in who is on their side. Whoever that might be, an independent, or a Democrat, or maybe even a Republican who would change things. But it seems like they have to go more in that direction. I don't think they can get the amendment up again and try to do this all over again in the very near future,
So
though.
you think that's the ceiling? In other words, 57% of the people in the state who voted for the abortion amendment, that's about as far as we got, or I should say they got.
I think it
Or,
would.
or is it beyond 60?
I think it would have gone beyond 60, except that Governor DeSantis and his team lobbied extremely well to the public, and they got that 40%. They scared people enough to keep it in play the way it is, and they got just over 40% by letting people think that this amendment was really far out.
I don't think they're going to give up. I just don't know what the next step is for them. It could be a legislative step, or it could be, again, an amendment.
But they need the power of a politician. So it might be that they're going to go for the next election cycle for governor.
All right. The other amendment that went down to defeat, of course, was the marijuana amendment, which would have legalized recreational marijuana. Yeah. This curious as well. It had overwhelming support, but it could not reach that 60% threshold. What do they do now?
Well, Frank, these are two good questions when you look at it together, because to me, it means that the next candidate for governor, candidates plural, they really have to take a look at this. They have to take a look at both of the issues. And if someone's going to run for governor here and they support both of those amendments, I think it gives them a leg up in terms of maybe capturing, the gubernatorial race. So the Governor DeSantis may be actually giving away something here to the next challenger coming in from the Democratic side, perhaps.
Well, you make a good point. If I'm running for governor, and I know that 57%, yes. I think the final number was 55, but 57% support the abortion amendment, and an overwhelming majority support the marijuana, recreational marijuana. Right. I would want to run on that because I already have a built-in constituency that wants that.
Exactly. And then if you can come in with some moderate views on taxes and where things are going, you'd have a really good chance of making it.
It will be interesting, the
Yeah.
gubernatorial race when it happens. All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we see who enjoyed the beautiful rays of sunshine this week and who ended up running for cover when we present the always popular segment, Sunshine or Showers, when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. Whatever the political situation, the sunshine always shines on Florida, but there are those days when the skies darken. So every week we determine who was in the sunshine this week, who was in the showers, in a segment we call, appropriately enough, Sunshine or Showers. So for you, Dr. Rossi, who is in the sunshine this
Frank,
week?
I have to put Senator Rick Scott in the sunshine. A lot of people, even in the Republican Party, kind of question some of his positions in the past, his personality issues, but he has been very cagey, very smart in using his own money. He has almost unlimited wealth, and he has been successful in all of his elections, and particularly this one. And now he's looking forward to a really enriched career in the Senate because of his own actions and because of how he's handled himself. So he's moving forward. He's at the forefront of the Republican Party, and that's where it is.
I think the word would be efficient. He's very efficient when he runs a campaign.
Efficient. Yeah, very efficient and very good at it. So let's put him in the sunshine.
All right, Rick Scott in the sunshine for Dr. Rossi this week.
And how about you for this week? What do you come up with?
I'm going to put the city of Tallahassee in the sunshine. It's their 200th anniversary. They selected Tallahassee as the capital because it was right between St. Augustine and Pensacola. They thought it would be a great location. 1824, they did that. They had a big party. I don't know if you missed it or not. You might have caught it on NBC 40 where you can see this show. The festival included a sold-out concert by Tallahassee's very own, and I know you're a fan, rapper T-Pain.
Oh, okay. All right.
You have all his CDs and
No,
everything.
I don't. But that's
you
okay.
love Steely Dan and T-Pain because you like the rapper T-Pain.
Well, let's stay with Steely Dan. I can stay with that.
You don't have T-Pain?
No, I don't have that one.
No, okay. Anyway, he is from Tallahassee. He was part of the concert, so congratulations, Tallahassee. 200 years.
Very good.
The 200th anniversary.
Good one. Good
All right,
one.
you know how it works here. I mean, some days are just beautiful. There's a nice breeze, and then you hear a clap of thunder.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're being rained on. So who was in the showers for you this
Well,
morning?
I think real rain showers for Donald Trump Jr. because he said that it's time for the president of Ukraine to not get his allowance, in January, and he's going to see how that feels, and a very sarcastic comment about the leader of a country who's in the middle of a war against Russia. I mean, why say things like this? By the way, this is not what his father, the president-elect, needs. It just seems like it's like sarcastic, nasty, and certainly not necessary.
Yeah.
Why bring it up? I mean, why say things like this? I mean, even if he doesn't want to spend money on Ukraine, okay, that's his opinion, but he doesn't have to be nasty and ridiculous in his comment. I think it's absurd, really.
I would concur. It's just a mean comment.
It's mean. Yeah.
Either keep it to yourself or just say, hey, we have to look at Ukraine again and see about the funding there.
Yeah.
Don't say we're cutting off your allowance like you're a kid.
Another unforced error,
All
as
right.
they say. And now for you.
For me.
Who do you have now in the show?
I have Spirit Airlines. They're just south of Fort Lauderdale, if you're watching on the affiliate there. They've had a rough couple of weeks. They've had major cutbacks. They've cut $80 million. They've had to sell some planes. They had to eliminate jobs. To make matters worse, as they flew to Haiti this week, the plane was hit by gunfire from the ground.
Oh my God!
So I mean, Spirit Air. I've flown Spirit Airlines. It's low cost. It's almost like a flying bus, but it works. It gets you there.
Yeah.
It has general seating. You just get on and sit where you want. But they've had a couple of difficult weeks. So Spirit Airlines, we wish you well. Fly high, but they're in the showers this week because they've had some internal and also external issues.
I can see the reason.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, a commentary by yours truly titled "Let's Be Frank," when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back. Indulge me for a moment in a brief history lesson with current day implications. Chester Alan Arthur will always be remembered, if he is at all, as one of the bearded, obscure presidents of the late 1880s. He was president for just 3.5 years, taking over for the assassinated James Garfield. He was also the president with the least amount of experience of all those who entered the White House, and a product of a corrupt civil service system that rewarded workers for their obedience and allegiance to the politicians in power. Up until his time, those handed out federal and state civil service jobs were expected to work for and contribute to their benefactors. The longer their politician friends stayed in power, the longer they were employed. Chester Alan Arthur did 3 things. He modernized the Navy, which came in handy less than 20 years later when the U.S. won the Spanish-American War. He fought back as best he could an extreme immigration bill that barred Chinese immigrants from entering the U.S., and most importantly, he showed courage by turning his back on the very system that made him rich and helped him become president. To the consternation of his friends and allies, Arthur made all federal workers permanent employees, regardless of who was in the White House. And by doing so, he lessened the power of one man, in this case the president, to directly control at his whim the government he oversaw. I bring this up because of all things President-elect Donald Trump is proposing, this one worries me the most. Federal employees should not work with a sword over their heads, making decisions to gain favor instead of doing what's right for us. There have been claims of a so-called deep state that has worked against presidents and continues to do so. But quite frankly, that doesn't make sense. If true, it would mean federal employees by the thousands have conspired to control all presidents, Republican and Democrat, something not one has complained about until Trump. It's imperative that federal employees be allowed to do their jobs unafraid of who is in office and what he may do. What one of the least known presidents of all time, Chester Alan Arthur, put in place more than 140 years ago has stood the test of time. Anything different is going backwards. We'll be right back. That's it for this week's edition of Power and Politics. On behalf of my co-host, political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, and the fine folks working behind the scenes, thanks for joining us. As always, we'd like to know what you think. Visit us at powerandpolitics.tv or email us at info@powerandpolitics.tv. We'll see you again a week from now at this time and on this same station. Have a great week.